I am here to give you permission to take the absolute most lazy way you can figure out to sharpen your tools. Because as long as it gets sharp, why stress about extra effort? The medium you're going to use to get that sharpness doesn't really matter to the steel, but it might matter to you based upon your laziness quotient. My opinion, water stones are going to get you the sharpest. Oil stones are probably the most practical. Diamonds, whether real or fake, the easiest by far. And sandpaper, it's just so much. Now, I started out with water stones, and my opinion, you are going to get the sharpest out there. And back in the day, we all looked for those natural water stones, the Japanese stones. You paid a premium price for them. Nowadays, the manufactured stones, I started out with Norton's because that was the most popular brand back there, but they have come so far along. You are going to get your sharpest tools off of a modern day manufactured water stone. But my kind of question is just how sharp does a lazy sharpener need to get their tools, especially if you're just shoving it through wood, and the sharpest of tools are going to dull down to a more realistic level fairly quickly. And B, using the water stones can be quite messy. Now, you are not going to wear out modern water stones. That used to be a concern back in the day because you do abrade away material, so you wear them down and you're constantly flattening them. In the real world, you're not going to wear them out. What you are going to do is break them because they are fairly fragile. And come on, admit it, we're clumsy. Oil stones can also be messy. I mean, you will get oil around, but not so much. Some people will use kerosene instead of oil, but that just reeks. The thing with the oil is, as you're sharpening, you're getting on your fingers, so if you're touching your work, you just get, well, it's how it's been with me. But to me, it does seem the most practical because you are using oil, so that will lubricate and protect your tools. And really, you only need to get a hard and soft Arkansas stone or something equivalent like that, and you're all set. So it's one box. It's simple. You put a little oil on in the beginning, you could probably sharpen 20, 30 times without adding any more. So it's not that messy, but there is that factor to it. And if you're a lazy person, cleaning up after sharpening your tools, it's going to be another step. Paper. Don't get me started down that track. Yes, I did go down the share your smart thing, but you got plate, you got sandpaper, you got glue, you're constantly moving it, you're constantly fixing it, you're accidentally tearing it because you're just starting out learning. I mean, you are clumsy and you break the glass, you get a little fraction over there. Paper is a lot. It is not for a lazy sharpener. Diamonds, on the other hand, whether they are real or fake, well, they've been around and out there long enough that they have gotten competitors out there. So the price is kind of plummeted on them. So the price barrier isn't that big a deal anymore. And it comes down to convenience. Because if you don't have a convenient way of sharpening, you're just not going to sharpen because, you're lazy. How much more convenient is to just pick your tools up, bring them over here, and get going. So convenience is the number one secret to being a good, lazy sharpener. Y'all saw me? I just brought my stones from here to over there. I just do that for the videos because it's easier to film in front on the workbench. Most of the time when I'm working, they don't even move. They stay right here. This is a sharpening setup for most all of my woodworking tools except the lathe. So what do I have? My most common used jigs. This right here does the lever caps for most of my screws, and you can also use it to tighten up other tools. And just an overpriced jig, that works very, very well. I do like it, but a simple Eclipse one. And then a thin metal ruler for whenever I do the ruler trick. Over here I have my setup jigs for 25 to 30 degrees for this right here. And in this box right here, I keep everything else. I have, a scraping sharpener. I have my diamond paddles for, sharpening, things like router bits, that kind of stuff, Forstner bits. I have my angle gauge, and I have some green for the stroke, which just so happens to be sitting on the shelf right there. So all my sharpening tools are in the same place where I do my tools. Makes it really convenient that way. If I'm doing a lot of work, you know, I'll have this sitting at the corner of my bench, my stroke, and it's just for touching up my blades. But if you've been researching the cult of sharpening, you know, some people believe in strokes, some people don't. I'm one that will use it when I'm doing that kind of work. But if I'm just cutting dovetails or cutting Morrison tendons, that kind of stuff, that stays on the peg because it's not as convenient. Now, I love my jigs. But if you're going the lazy way, this, even though it only takes, 10, maybe 20 seconds to set up your whatever you're doing with the jig, that's an extra step, and you have to grab more stuff, and then you have to put it up. So, that's not the laziest way to do it. The laziest way to do it is to just pick up your tool, come over your stones, and get busy. No jig setup needed or required. Now, some of y'all might now be saying that, Sean, that is just not the most accurate way to do it. Well, here's the thing about laziness. We recognize that you don't have to be that accurate. I mean, look at a plane blade. You put it in your plane, you got tapered down, and you have your bevel right here, right? A lot of people will put that right at 30 degrees or 25 degrees or 27.5 degrees or anything like that. But if you think about it, it doesn't matter as long as it is less than whatever the bed angle of your hand plane is. If the bed angle of your hand plane is at 45 degrees, if your bevel right there is, 40 degrees, 35 degrees, or just something quite a bit less than the 45s, the cutting edge won't know the difference. So I'm not saying get rid of your jigs all at once or anything like that, or go whole hog lazy. I mean, they serve a purpose. They kind of reestablish stuff. So, every 10, 15 times you sharpen a hand plane blade or a chisel, you use your jig, you can reset everything. But don't stress about it. You're lazy. Okay, Sean, I'll give you that one. The plane blade, the angle of attack is more set by the plane's bed than the bevel on the chisel. So, there's a little bit of leeway there. But your hand plane chisels, oh my gosh, those have to be perfect. Those have to be set every single time and consistent, right? Well, if you're like me, I basically use the same chisel for just about everything. So if I'm chopping, I might want a different angle on my chisel. If I'm going through pine, I'm doing intricate wood, I might drop it down just so it's easier to push and it will slice nicer. If I'm working really curly woods, I might make it really, really blunt so I can turn it into a scraping action. If I'm going through a knot or something like that, I might change the angle a little bit so it's a little bit more durable. All that. Do you want to set up a jig to get all those different angles? Or do you just want to say, I'm like a little steeper now. Lift up a little bit. I like it a little bit lower. Okay, I'll just spend a little time on the rough side and drop it down. Lower, higher. Those are variables that a lazy person can get very accurate, but we don't want to deal with those decimal points. Now, I'm not telling you to go full lazy all at once. You got to ramp up your laziness. So, save those jigs, save your grinder steps like that. Save that extra side you have to do, knowing there's a few extra steps across the shop you need to do or a tool you need to set up. Don't go full lazy all at once, because sometimes it's kind of nice having a reset button. But you don't need to reset every single time. Now here's my lazy man setup, and the prices for this kind of stuff have dropped dramatically, and you don't even need to get all of it. The first thing I do is I just kind of clean it off because my shop is dusty because, I don't sweep very often being lazy. Now, this is set up with a coarse, medium fine, and super, super fine. I think the grit equivalence of this is like 400, 1,000, 4,000, 8,000. But I'm going to tell you that a lot of times even 8,000 on a diamond or fake diamond is not quite the same as 8,000 on like a Norton Waterstone. I don't get a mirror finish off of this, but I got to get a consistent and sharp finish off this. And with that in mind, if I were just starting out, all I would do is get something like a 1,000 equivalent, because this is generally where I start, and I jump up to 4,000 or 8,000, and honestly you could probably skip this one if you just spent a little bit more time on that one. Now the whole idea of this one is just put a little bit of water on it, not enough, just to pick the metal shavings out, and you come over and you find your angle. Now here's the thing, if you've hollow ground it, you can find that easy, just going click, 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 click. It wants to find its spot. But if you didn't, let's use some common sense. We're all pretty good at figuring out 90, and 45 is roughly half of that. So that right there, if you just get that a little bit lower, there's your plane angle, right? Now, a chisel, this one is set up roughly 25 to 27 degrees, so that's half of my 45. So if you get that close there, you're gonna be fine. Just kind of get that angle, half of 45. Now I will say this, I find that chisels are the harder of the hand tools to do, simply because this distance right here is so short. So you sometimes have a tendency to put more pressure on one side or the other. How you solve that is how you hold it. I'm going to take my finger and I am going to put all my pressure above this bevel right here, not the edge. I want to put my pressure there. So I put all that pressure there, and you'll notice my finger is straight up and down, and I'm putting the pressure on the tip of my finger. I'm not laying it on its side, because if you do that one, you have a tendency to put pressure on one side or the other. I'm going straight down, and then I just use the backhand to drag it back and push it forward. So I'm using what little distance there is to kind of equalize the pressure, focusing all my force right in the middle of that bevel right there. And it's as simple as just dragging it back and forth. Another thing to consider is your body. If you're not going to be hunching over and changing your body position or doing a dance or anything like that, you can maintain a fairly still body and just move the tool. And if that's the case, notice where the handle is. It's up against my wrist. So this stays totally still. So now I'm not tempted to change this angle as I'm working through. If you tend to use your whole body to move it, that angle, just if it's locked to my wrist, you can see it's changing. You're rounding it over. But if I've got all my pressure right here, I'm leaning over the top, and all of a sudden my body stays the same, it's very easy for me to keep this angle right here consistent. So to eliminate this action, I focus my pressure straight down on the middle of the blade, and to eliminate this action, I simply lock it to my big fat body, because it ain't moving as easy to change that angle. If you don't have as much pizza anchoring ability as me, well, try harder, or just, maybe lean against a workbench or something like that. Now from here, my lazy technique is I will come over to my 1,000 stone myself. I'll come over, I'll set that down, and I will generally work it back and forth just a few times and feel. I already have a burr. With just those 3 strokes, I've got a nice burr that I can feel that goes all the way across the blade. Continuing to work it back and forth is only going to, kind of bring that back and replace the burr that's already there. So why do redundant effort? So once I've got that one, I can come over here and I'll take 2 or 3 strikes. Notice my pressure straight in the middle of the blade, my angle set. That's it. I feel it. The burr itself feels a little bit shorter, but it's also a little bit more kind of, instead of curved like that, it's a little bit steeper. So it's easy to find. There is no need to take off the burr in between strokes, because you're basically replacing the burr with a new burr. And then I will come over here, and on this stone I will take a few extra stripes. There we go. Feel the burr is smaller and sharper. At that point, bring it down and get back to work. I've removed the burr with just that much material. Here's a 1-inch chisel. Now, because it is wider, it is actually physically harder for me to put more pressure on one side than the other. It just wants to register flat. But once again, my pressure goes right in the middle of the blade. I keep my finger straight up and down. I'm not leaning over here because that could affect it. And then lock out whatever angle I want. Locked it to my wrist. 1, 2, 3. Feel for a burr, not quite there. 1, 2, 3. Feel, yes. Not quite there, or not that different. Different. Come over, remove the burr, and then let's see if we can get a close-up look. The whole idea between sharpness is that you do not want to be able to see the edge because you can't see sharp. And I'm not getting any light reflection off of that you can tell. You can see it's not different from the back side. So there's the sharp blade, and how many seconds did that take? Now, once blades get wider than an inch, your technique does need to change a little bit. So I have a 2 1/4 inch blade in my hand plane, which means you're going to have to get another tool, which that's where this screwdriver, which you can get from Lee Valley, is nice because it fits all plane blade breakers. And on this one, you have to remove it. On some other ones, you can just twist and go. But here's the thing. If I just put my pressure in the middle, well, I'm going to be removing a lot of material from the middle because wherever you put the pressure is where you remove most of the material. So depending upon what you're wanting to accomplish when you sharpen it, me personally on this particular blade, I like the slightest of cambers. Basically, I just want to remove a little bit more material here and here and keep that pretty much straight because this is my smoothing plane. Some people like to have a large camber on that, which that's the easiest one to sharpen because you don't have to be too critical on getting it the arc just perfectly. It's just got to be a consistent curve. Absolutely straight, I find to be the hardest because you basically have to divide the plane blade up into different segments and equally add pressure. So a lot of times I will start in the middle and notice both of these fingers, they're putting pressure above the bevel right here. They're not really putting pressure on the edge. All my pressure is coming right here and they are pointing straight down. They're not coming from the side because once again, it is hard to control an equal pressure when you're doing the fats of your finger, but if you're putting it right on that bone, you can really tell where your pressure is going to be. And then once again, you're just going to kind of lock the shorter blade because it doesn't have a long handle like a chisel in with your palm to keep it all consistent. So add just a slightest bit of lubricant. And here we go. I will come over, put both fingers right there, and then notice no steel is coming off over here. It's all coming off over there. That's because that's where the pressure is. Okay? I come over here, I put my pressure here, watch that. Steel comes off on this side, not there. That's the problem we have whenever we are doing longer blades than about an inch. And then I will I'll just kind of put all 4 down there and put a little bit more pressure in the front, in the middle, just to take it off, like that, okay? Feel for the burr. Now, I did that a lot more than I normally do, so I have a really heavy burr right now, but I'm still not going to remove it. I'll just come over, take a few swipes over here, a few swipes over there, and a few swipes straight off the middle. Feel the burr, it's different and smaller. Then come back over and do the same exact thing. Notice on that one, I changed the angle, so I did the exact opposite on this side, and then I'll go in the middle. Remove the burr, wipe it down, get back to work. So with years of sharpening experience, I have discovered that the lazy way really is the best way because you literally discover your tool is dull, you come over, you take a few swipes, and you come back. You don't make it a big ordeal. Yes, having jigs and grinders and stuff. I'm repeating that there because I think it's important because you do need a reset. But once again, that's a reset. That's not an all set. You don't have to do it all the time. Now, I'm sure some of y'all that are more conspiratorial out there are sitting there grumbling to the screen right now, saying that he's trying to trick us. He's trying to get us into the cult of freehand sharpening by making it look easy enough for a lazy person. And to that, I'm going to tell you, no. Chicken McNuggets are not better than hamburgers in a Happy Meal. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe picked up a few tips and tricks along the way. But in the end, I always want you to remember, it's always worth the effort to learn, create, even if this time all you're doing is creating a new skill, and share it with others. Yes, spread the gospel. Y'all be safe and have fun.